Comrades, welcome to the 2022 conference of the National Shop Stewards Network. It's 3 years since we've met in person, although as you can see, not on the picket lines, not on the protests. And before we start, because as I've said previously, we've got people coming in all the time and some of our main speakers are on their way, that we do take seriously the threat of COVID. So I'll just repeat this for new people who've just come in. We've got a balcony upstairs. If people feel that it's better to spread out, then that's fine. There's masks and there's hand sanitizers outside as well. So it's we're trying to take the precautions that we can. But I just want to make this point, is that not everyone has made it here. COVID has had an effect. The chaos of the bosses system, the crisis, the catastrophic crisis of this Tory government has assisted the tragedy that people that we all know haven't made it. But we're here to celebrate. So let's have a round of applause in memory of those fighters. Thank you. Comrades, if you don't know my name is Rob Williams. I'm the chair of the National Shop Stewards Network. Absolutely delighted to announce that this is the 15th annual conference of the NSSN, since it was initiated by the RMT under the late, great Bob Crow, the General Secretary of that union. The 1 year we didn't have a conference was when we parked it to take part in a demonstration just at the end of the 2017 general election. Comrades, like some in this room, I was in a different meeting last night over in East Ham in Newham, because I was part of a rally to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the jailing of the 5 dockers in Pentonville prison. And in 19 days, we will be marking that anniversary of them being arrested. But you know what's fantastic? In 25 days, we will be marking that celebrated the release of the Pentonville dockers and the 50th anniversary of that tremendous historic victory. The TUC called a general strike. I'll just repeat that phrase. The TUC called a general strike for July the 31st, 1972. And the reason we're not marking that is because a famous victory was won, because in reality a general strike was developing from below. So if anyone tries to argue with you, oh, general strikes, we don't need for them, they don't work well, that can prove them wrong. But the best way to celebrate that victory, that historic victory for workers, is to reflect on what is happening right now in the workers' movement, and discuss the strategy needed to move that struggle forward. Because the last 2 weeks in particular, I believe, have been a game changer as far as the trade union movement is concerned. A fortnight ago, many of us in the room were lining up to start the demonstration called by the TUC, perhaps up to 100,000 of us involved in that demonstration. And then 3 days later, we had the incredible strikes by the RMT union, linked in London Underground with Unite, but the National Rail and London Underground strikes. 50,000 RMT members stopping the rail and transport network in this country. If you needed a vivid demonstration of the power of workers, and as we have seen during COVID, confirmation that we are the key force in society. In a matter of days, from being constantly told the unions are too weak, got no power anymore, the right-wing media are now demanding that anti-union laws are beefed up further, and the Tories are threatening to introduce even more restrictive anti-union legislation. And yet the Tories did nothing. When P&O management walked into Parliament a few months ago and said, yeah, we broke the law when we sacked 800 workers, but we had to do it to protect our profits. And yet, Terry, when he speaks, his members in British Telecom, actually his members won a magnificent victory in their strike ballot. But 2,000 workers in the EE can't take strike action because even though they had a 96% majority for strike action, 8 of them were short, 8 votes short of the 50% threshold. The whole movement must stand up against any other Tory attacks on the RMT or any union involved like we did in 1972. And increasingly, it is the trade union movement moving on the front foot through a growing strike wave against the cost of living crisis that is providing leadership and winning support, not just from workers actually, but even sections of the middle class. I was outside the Old Bailey. It's the first time I've been to the Old Bailey, actually. Last Monday, when the barristers were on strike, and when the RMT took out their banner, the barristers applauded them. The barristers cheered them because of the action. The doctors, through the BMA, have sent messages of support to the RMT and threatening action on pay. And even the police in Scotland are saying that they are going to work to rule on the issue of pay. No wonder that we've had record searches for joining the union and interest in becoming involved in the trade unions. Comrades, the NSSN is proud to stand with the RMT and all the unions here and all the unions there and all the unions taking action as we have, as you've seen, on every picket line that takes place. We were outside King's Cross last Saturday afternoon when thousands of people took part in a solidarity protest with the RMT. We stand with the CWU, who have won a fantastic victory in BT, a balloting in Royal Mail, and have members to take further strike action in the post office. We stand with the GMB members down in South London, fighting as they won in Unite members in Whipps Cross, fighting to be brought back in to the NHS. We stand with the GMB officers and steward scandalously, outrageously arrested on the Wealdon picket line. And of course, we stand with the Unite Coventry bin strikers, striking against a Labour council that is prepared to stand, that is prepared to spend £3 million not supporting a strike, but breaking a strike. And those workers, we hope to hear today, are on the verge of victory. So unlike Sir Keir Starmer, unlike Tony Blair, unlike the new Labour front bench, we know whose side we're on. We're on the side of the workers and proud to do so. Comrades, there is a strike wave developing. It has grown out of the pandemic. First against the bosses' attacks such as fire and Riaya, and now for a pay rise to keep workers' heads above water. It's why the most popular thing you can do is go on strike. Ask Mick Lynch in the RMT. Ask the RMT themselves. Because we, the working class, we really are all in this together. Do you remember in 2011 when we had the public sector strikes? And the Tory press tried to say the public sector workers have got gold-plated pensions. Catherine will tell you from PCS that that is not exactly the truth. And I'm sure workers in the NHS and local government and others will say the same. But every worker now is in the same situation. Every worker is struggling to keep their heads above water. And workers are well aware that it's one rule for the bosses and their crisis-ridden Tory government. The bosses are swimming in profits. The Tories hand out contracts to their cronies. And of course, as far as Boris is concerned, then if 30 grand is not enough to decorate your flat in Downing Street, you get a Tory donor to bring out even more. And of course, the latest is that he wanted to build a treehouse for his little boy to the tune of 150 grand, which we hear was going ahead until his security detail told him, well, you might be in a really good position to be hit by a sniper if you go up there. I'm saying nothing more, by the way. Speech is recorded. But the Tories and the bosses are the ones who tell workers we should be grateful for a pay rise of a couple of percent. We should be thankful for a job when inflation is nearly 12% and energy inflation is 100% or more. That's why, side by side with taking action, the union movement should inscribe on our banner socialist nationalisation of the railways, of the networks, of the transport network, of Royal Mail, of British Telecom and the energy companies. It's this crisis-ridden, profit-driven capitalist system that causes inflation, not workers' wages. That's why a majority of workers supports the RMT strikes. I'm sure they'll support the other strikes, and that's why strikes have grown. I'm sure Kaz will tell us, deputising for Sharon Graham today, that Unite have 300 disputes going on all over the country. Similarly, the GMB have an whole list of strikes and other unions as well. And the strikes that have grown over the last year and the crisis within the Tories are giving workers a confidence that it's possible to fight and it's possible to defeat the bosses and the Tories. But the best way to make that possible is to bring together workers across the private and public sectors in a joint fight on paid jobs. So at the same time as we support each other's disputes, we believe that all the unions must urgently meet together, get in the room together to coordinate industrial action ballots to build the widest possible strike action. Because it's happened before. 11 years ago, the TUC conference that took place in London, 29 public sector unions got together that led to the 2 million strike in November that year, effectively a public sector general strike against the Tories' attacks on pensions. There is even more potential for mass joint action now, as workers across all sectors are struggling against spiral price rises while real wages fall. We lobbied the TUC Congress in 2011. We've lobbied it every year since 2010. We have called a rally and lobby on the 11th of September in Brighton when the TUC meets. And it's never been so important. And this time, we fight until we win. Help us build our TUC lobby. Join with us. Come and show that we want to fight together. Comrades, I'll finish with this. Today, we will hear the disputes that are taking place. Will we hear the struggles that are happening? Will we hear what needs to be done to build solidarity? We will share our experiences. We will do what we've always done to build solidarity and support for workers taking action. But we also hammer out the fighting strategy that we need to win. We marched together on the 18th of June. Now we organise to strike together. Join us in that fight. Right? Well, I'm waiting for Catherine to sort this. So she brought the bus up from Cardiff. I've always thought Cardiff people are a bit late, but there we are. So the first speaker we're going to bring in, we're waiting obviously for people to come in, but we're delighted to have the GMB mighty dispute, mighty in all ways, the strike in Tooting in South London by outsourced workers. Helen O'Connor, the GMB regional organiser, is going to speak. Helen, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for inviting me to speak on behalf of GMB Southern Region members. I'll start by talking about the NHS, but I'm sure there's some themes that I will touch on that will cut across all sectors, that will be common to all of us who are serious about organising in our trade unions and in our communities. The NHS has been subjected to cuts and privatisation for more than 4 decades. Unless we organise now to defend it, in 10 years' time, we will not have a national health service left. And it's the poorest and the lowest paid who will end up dying in agony without health care. And this is unthinkable as we live in a cost of living crisis as well. In my work for the GMB union, I've been organising outsourced hospital workers like porters, cleaners and hostesses across South London and Surrey for the last number of years. The way these workers are treated by companies like Sodexo, G4S, Mighty and others on a day-to-day basis proves beyond any doubt that privatisation has no place in the NHS or anywhere else for that matter. What is worse is that the methods used to exploit these outsourced staff are now being adapted to staff working in-house in the public sector as well. The driving down of vital services like sanitation and nutrition in hospitals is a danger to patients who are going through the most vulnerable period of their entire lives. These private companies operate on a shoestring. They fail to provide any of the most basic staff welfare that are routinely provided by the NHS. They fail to pay staff for hours worked on time. The sick pay is based on statutory levels of roughly £96 a week, which no one anywhere can live on in this country. And these workers are lucky if they even get that. Cuts and extending the profit margin is the order of the day, and this is happening right across all sectors of the economy. The outsourcing giants routinely flout health and safety laws around mitigating risks to staff being exposed to toxic chemicals. They breach food hygiene standards. In 2019, people died from listeria and hospital sandwiches in this country. And just recently, Sodexo staff in Queen Mary's Hospital have provided me with photographic evidence of bugs in pre-prepared salads. Cleaning standards on wards and public areas are also at rock bottom. I've had pictures sent to me of dust bunnies under beds in St. George's Hospital, overflowing clinical waste bins, overflowing red linen bags, blood-soaked clinical waste materials left lying around, and needle stick injuries are on the rise. And this is because staffing has been cut back to the bone. Hospital cleaners are required to cover too many areas, to rush hospital cleaning, to do spot cleaning when areas should be thoroughly cleaned. Staff who handle patients' food are also expected to carry out hospital cleaning on the same day. These private companies are making our hospitals unsafe for patients, and we need to be clear about that. And also the clinical staff and the outsourced staff. These staff are getting injured in the line of duty, and it's not uncommon to see outsourced workers in their 60s and even their 70s struggling with excessive workloads because the right to retire has all but been eroded for increasing numbers of the lowest paid working people. There's not enough reps in the NHS and not enough reps engaging with members on the shop floor and at ward level. There's far too much partnership working with management in the NHS. I'm not saying we don't engage with management, but partnership working exclusively has not worked for NHS trade union members for more than 30 years. In unions, unions tend to sign off on cuts and privatisation deals rather than fighting back. Unions must spend more time talking to members rather than sitting in rooms with management, and we must organise workers properly. That's clearly the missing piece of the jigsaw in the NHS. It's important to get back to basics. Mick Lynch made the point in our picket line last week, and I'll repeat it here. There's no point in having a profile in a trade union if you can't get your people over the line in a dispute. And listening to members properly and getting those material gains for union members has never been more important to build confidence in the trade unions. Building solidarity within individual unions and across the unions themselves is absolutely critical in this period. And linking union campaigns with the social movements is also key. Our main job is organising in the workplaces, but we must also work with and help build campaigns within working class communities. Mighty cleaners in St. George's Hospital have taken 10 full days of solid strike action. These GMB members, all migrant workers, are fighting against exploitation. All they want is equal pay for equal work. They've rejected the divisive tactics of the company who told our black members they should not allow a white woman to organise them into a union. But our members have stood together because the thing that binds them together is their class. And the reps have worked with me around the clock to build unity and solidarity amongst the mighty workers. And the mighty strikers took solidarity to the next level when they marched on the RMT rally in King's Cross last Saturday to stand with their brothers and sisters in the RMT trade union. And the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch repaid this solidarity by visiting our picket lines the following day. These were significant and powerful moments. The developments of last weekend represent a complete rejection of identity politics and an affirmation of the class struggle. We united in saying no to divide and rule, no to identity politics. And we have to be clear, identity politics is not class politics. Identity politics can be toxic and divisive, and it's been waged like a weapon to divide and defeat our class. And historically, socialists have always been uncompromising around the question of class. Class is at the base of our depression. This is what unites us. Mighty have tried to break this dispute. When the workers went back next week, supervisors are treating them less favourably, and they're now going after our people to frame them up. They want the GMB and the mighty strikers to back down, but they have miscalculated. We will defend our members. We will oppose attempts to victimise our representatives. And just so they get the message loud and clear, on Monday, we will be announcing further action. And I'll finish on this point. Let me give this message to the Labour Party, to those Labour MPs who've stood on our picket lines and other unions' picket lines. We welcome this. But to be honest, that's what your job is, representing the working class. To those like Starmer, Lammy and the rest, who have not only refused to stand on picket lines, and who have refused to support industrial action, you are a complete disgrace. Part of the battles that are being waged on the picket lines cannot be separated and are part of the battle for effective political representation for our class. So if the leadership of the Labour Party and the majority of Labour MPs won't support our struggles, our campaigns and our strikes, then they can stand aside because, frankly, we don't need them. Our unions will organise in the workplaces and in the communities to build the strongest possible resistance to the Tories and to the profiteers. And if we do that in unity and solidarity, we can win. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen, and our full solidarity to the mighty strikers and every GMB striker that's out there as well, every dispute that's out there. Gives us great pleasure to introduce Terry Pullinger, Deputy General Secretary of the CWU, and I think certainly, I don't think there's a better case for renationalisation than seeing the salaries that some of the BT bosses are on. You can't believe the CEO is on 3.5 million quid when they're setting up food banks in their workplaces. And I think certainly the fact that there's too much month at the end of the money for BT members shows why those disputes and ballots have been so well supported. And obviously, as well, the other case for renationalisation, clearly Royal Mail as well, so disputes ongoing there. So very, very welcome, Terry, to this event.
Morning, everyone. Is it working all right? Yeah? Good to see you. First of all, solidarity to all the unions, all the other unions from the CWU and all the disputes that are taking place. I also want to say what a pleasure it is to be in this room today rather than sitting across the table from Royal Mail senior management, which I'm spending my life doing at the moment. Hugely therapeutic to be amongst proper union people. Shop stewards, local reps, the absolute core of our union, what makes us strong, and should be other unions as well. So it's not just disputes, Rob, I would say. It's looking at how we organise throughout our unions to make sure people have got representatives in the workplace, those that are in workplaces. That's what's needed. Far too many people haven't got people like you to look after them. So you should be hugely proud of yourselves. Massive thank you from me personally, because that's what keeps the movement going. I believe there's nothing more honourable than spending your life representing fellow workers. It's certainly been the honour of my life. So congratulations to all of you for keeping it up through thick and thin and the periods that we go through. As for politicians, I will say this, I think it's particularly great at the moment. The unions are shifting their position on that and talking about industrial trade unionism again. Rather than there was a period there where it felt that some of our unions, all we was talking about was politicians and who's this in the Labour Party and who's that in the Labour Party. I say this, so all my working life, and I'm 64 this year, I've seen politicians of all persuasions let down ordinary, decent working people. The people who make the difference for working people is trade unionism, is us. And that's, of course, we would rather have a Labour government, of course, but we would still have to do our work. So to see trade unions standing up at the moment is particularly great. And I want to say, Rob said about, a game changer, was the words that he used. I think COVID was a game changer. So it was a terrible time. We lost members, people lost families, but key workers were working through that. And all of a sudden, for a moment, the sun came out on the real people who keep the country connected, on the people that really serve other ordinary working people and keep everything going. And that was key workers. That was shop workers. That was NHS workers. It was delivery workers. It was Royal Mail workers. It was train workers. It was everything that's important to society. Suddenly, they were the new rock stars during that pandemic. Suddenly, their true value was shown, was illuminated for other people. Suddenly, people had to step back and go, wow, applauding them on the streets. It's something that should happen all the time. And I think that was a game changer for people. And I think that's why there's a lot of support at the moment from the general public for people that are taking action and standing up for themselves. Because they are the real rock stars, ordinary working people. They always have been. And I think there's moments in life. Now listen, I don't want people challenging me on history and everything else. This is for me, right? I'm no great historian. I don't claim to be. I don't claim to be some great intellect or anything else. But I think there are moments in time which turns things round for us. So I had this theory that when people came back from the Second World War, ordinary working people, they came back with a view, we are not going back to what we had before. We're not going back to it. Doctors' tanner, no security in work, no pensions. They weren't going back for it. Everyone thought Churchill was going to get re-elected, but Clement Attlee was elected. And from that came all our national wealth, all the things that were right, working people needed. All those things come from that period of time. In the 70s, Thatcher came in and they wanted to start dismantling all of that. And ever since, that's what they've been trying to do. Dismantle the things that should be there, education, everything for ordinary working people. Key workers, let's keep the name, because they are key workers. And they chose a fight. Thatcher chose a fight, didn't she, with the miners. Of all the big disputes, the Prince, the docks and everywhere else, she picked a fight with the miners. One, because she wanted to expose nationalise industries, give them a bad name in order to privatise them all, but secondly, to try and destroy the unions. And we've been fighting back, or trying to fight back, ever since. She encouraged people to be selfish. That's what she did, so that people stood alone, they didn't stand collectively. That's what happened. And I tell you now, Johnson, in my opinion, has got his hands over all of these disputes. You telling me he ain't pulled all the top bosses in and said, don't you give them more than 2%, don't you give them big pay rises, you do as you're told. That's what he's doing, and he's all over these companies, Boris Johnson. And my prediction, and you have to believe this, it is a massive miscalculation because of COVID, because our people feel, because our people respect the key workers. So our disputes in Royal Mail, the post office, should never have been split from Royal Mail. They only did that so that they could privatise Royal Mail. They only did it for that reason. And the post office has been wrecked under that. They put no investment into it. It's disappeared from our high street. Look at that scandal, the Horizon scandal, and the way they've tried to spend millions trying to cover up what they've done to innocent people. Going into the pandemic, Royal Mail were predicting losses of between 500 and 600 million. Coming out of the pandemic, with an agreement we made to change and reinvent and protect this great public service, as well as the standard of living, the job security and the retirement security for our members, we made a deal in good faith in 2021. That's all. It's only just over a year ago, coming out of the pandemic, when they thought they was going to have losses of between 500 and 600 million, they've announced over £746 million profit. Millions of pounds has gone to shareholders. Millions of pounds has gone to the people who run the company. The CEO's just been given a £140,000 bonus. Bonus. But there's nothing for our people. Not on your life. We will fight. Absolutely, we will fight for our people. I'll tell you something else as well. We are the people of honour. We are the decent people. These people, these senior managers doing the bidding for shareholders, they are the arseholes, not us, not our members. I'll tell you what we say to our members. It's about pride. It's about dignity. It's about character. It's about self-respect. You are a decent working person. You are a key worker. You have to fight. We don't get what we deserve. We only get what we negotiate. But you have to negotiate from a position of strength. We've told our members, you get behind this union. We never back down. And I tell you, because they want to wreck this great public service, where would we have been out the United Kingdom without the postal service during the pandemic? We were the ones delivering test kits, picking up test kits, looking after the health of this country, and also keeping everybody connected. Social inclusion. Over 500 years old, it's still massively relevant, massively important, and these people want to destroy it. Mark, stand on me. Stand on me. We built it, and if anyone's going to smash it up, we will. Don't think we're going to give it to them so they can stuff their mouths with gold. CW is on the march. The postal workers are going to fight. You watch this dispute go. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Terry, and we're looking forward to all those picket lines the CW are going to be organising as well. Our next speaker, another key section of the working class that's delivered all through the pandemic and provided massive support to ordinary working class people. The General Secretary, Sarah Woolley of the Bakers Union. Bakers Union has always been a good friend to the NSSN, so you're very welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how to follow that. It's absolutely fantastic to be here in person and brilliant to be speaking to you as actual physical beings. The last couple of years it's been great to see you as squares on a screen, but isn't it great to be back together? And what an exciting time to be a trade unionist. I know there's lots of people taking very brave action. You know, CWU have just talked about theirs, but it is exciting, isn't it? People are talking about trade unions for what trade unions are. They're not talking about what the right-wing press talk about them, you know, when they're just slagging off RMT for shutting London down, as I always refer to. And there's more people now that's taking industrial action than I can ever remember. Probably as long as I've been alive. More people are now standing up and demanding better. And who'd have thought that criminal barristers would take industrial action, eh? I mean, Jesus, we really are in a wave of exciting times. I want to start, though, by saying how immensely proud I am of each and every one of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union members and reps for everything that they've done over the last couple of years. Because just like CWU members have kept people in contact with each other throughout the pandemic, our members have quite literally fed the nation and kept food in your stomachs. Going to work day after day with literally hundreds of other people in factories or feeding customers, putting themselves at risk, and they've done a phenomenal job. And they really have truly been the key workers that we've always known our members to be for the 175 years that we've been around. And thanks to each and every one of you as well, because your workplaces will have been safer workplaces because you were there as representatives, challenging bad practices and exploitative bosses. The food industry is the biggest manufacturing unit in the UK. Yet, we're the biggest contributors to the economy. Yet when it comes to investment from the government, we're at the bottom of the pile. And that includes upskilling, you know, innovation, education. Technologies are brought in by employers rather than the industry invested in by the government. And I know that's not a surprise, but it's something that we've got to be talking about. And we know over the last couple of years that our members have been the forgotten key workers, named as such, but hidden due to the fact that they work behind the scenes, creating the food that we eat in order to survive. People talk about the food industry like it's somewhere to go where there's no other choice. You know, it's at the bottom of the rung. It's an industry that doesn't need skills. You don't need a university degree to work at Greggs, so it deserves low pay and precarious contracts. Well, I'm really proud to have worked in the food industry. I'm proud to have come from a Greggs shop. I wonder how many of you in the room could make 64 sandwiches an hour like I had to do on a daily basis. And deal with customers. You know, customers are horrible at Christmas. It's like dealing with crowd control, trying to keep them smiling. It wouldn't be the first time I've dressed up as Rudolph on Christmas Eve, just to try and put a smile on the face. And I wonder if people knew the skills that it took to be a mixer man. And I say mixer man because it is typically a male's job to do the mixing because it's so physically demanding. To ensure the right ingredients are put into mixers and not the wrong one, because an allergen being put in the wrong ingredients can quite literally kill somebody. And you only have to look at Natasha's Law to see how real that is. I wonder if they knew, you know, the sound of a machine. So we've got members that stand on a line and know something's wrong long before they call the engineers in because the machine just doesn't sound right. These are all skills that we don't talk about, that the public don't know about, but that our members have got and utilise day in, day out. Oh, God, you threw me off then 5 minutes. That's quite a lot, actually. Thanks. And even better, you know, a simple job, sounding like boxing up fondant fancies or putting cherries on the top of a Bakewell tart or Yorkshire puddings. Our members make all of those, and it sounds like a really easy job, but try sitting on a line for 12 hours, keeping up and doing that and keeping up to those cherries. It really isn't an easy job at all. And I wonder if people understood and knew about all those skills and all those jobs that our members do on a day-to-day basis, they'd still think that our industry was unskilled and undeserving of decent pay terms and conditions. Because I know, and everyone knows, sorry, I keep moving it away. I know and everyone knows that not everybody's cut out to do those jobs. And yes, a university degree might not be needed, but one mistake, as I've already mentioned, can truly be catastrophic. And we know that it's not just the food industry where people have got a misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge around the roles workers perform. Talking to the Unite bus drivers that were out on strike in Yorkshire, the UCU members earlier in the year in Leeds, and the RMT train staff in Wakefield, they all spoke about parts of their job that no one really knows about. No one knows that they do on a daily basis or have to do as part of their role. Because like with the food industry, the public only see the bits that they see. They don't get the other stuff that's behind all that. And it's down to us. It's down to us as shop stewards, as reps, as national officials, to talk about the roles that our members do. So the Joe public, if you like, understand that it's more than passing them a coffee over a counter at Greggs or, you know, getting them from A to B as a bus driver or cleaning a station as an RMT member. So as a union, we're changing the narrative about our industry. We want people to feel proud to work in it and the wider public to understand the skills that are needed and used every day to produce the food they eat. And join us in putting pressure on employers. You know, join us to demand that we have an increase in terms and conditions, better pay, better contracts, and of course investment as a result. Because our members, just like all your members, deserve better than what they're currently getting. We shouldn't be in a position where people in the food industry, and indeed any section of society, are going hungry because they're not paid enough in order to survive. And our Right to Food survey told us, and some of you may have heard these stats already, but I'm not going to apologise for repeating them because we actually know that this year they're going to be even worse when we resurvey our members. But last year, so we were in the big cost of living crisis that we are now, our Right to Food survey told us that 40% of key workers feeding the nation have eaten less than they should have done throughout the pandemic. 19% told us there'd been a time where their household had actually run out of food. 35% had gone without enough food so other members of their household could be fed properly. and 1 in 5 relied on food from a friend or a relative to provide meals. All this is due to the fact that they're paid so crap. You know, we'd even got 7.5% that were fully reliant on food banks. Even more reported concerns about running out of food. And I'm going to say it again, these people worked through the pandemic feeding the nation, yet our survey is telling us that the food insecurity is such a significant issue for workers in our industry. And it's disgraceful that the 6th richest country in the world, people are going hungry. And these aren't people that are working full time. They're doing 60, 70-hour weeks to make ends meet. And it's not even enough then. That's why we joined Ian Byrne MP, and who, in our opinion, is one of the good Labour Party politicians. And we joined his Right to Food campaign, and we're working on raising our industry up. We want rid of 0 hours contracts. We want 100% sick pay from day one, and a minimum of £15 an hour basic hourly rate, regardless of age, because you don't get a discount on your gas bill if you're under 25, so why should you have a discount in your wages? We don't want food workers going hungry because they can't put food on the table, because our members and those throughout the industry producing, delivering and serving the food you eat deserve better. Thank you to NSSN for bringing us together today. It's a fantastic platform as always, and it's a privilege to speak on it. I'm looking forward to working with yourselves and the affiliated trade unions to grow our movement, because it is our movement. And collectively, we force change, because we can't rely on the government and we can't rely on the opposition. We've got to do it ourselves. So solidarity and anything the bakers can do to support you all in your campaigns, just get in touch and we'll be there with our flags, standing shoulder to shoulder with you.
Thanks, Sarah, and we look forward to continuing the great work we've done together over the past decades, I think it's to be true. Our next speaker is One Kazab, better known as Kaz, probably to most people, and I think certainly speaking on behalf of Sharon Gray, and I think certainly from Unite, I think it's key. I don't suppose there's anybody in the room that hasn't been on a local Unite picket line over the past period, given the number of disputes all over the place that we've seen in terms of the unions. So it's great to have Kaz with us today.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, comrades. Look, obviously, apologies from Sharon Graham, but more importantly and formally, Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, sends solidarity greetings to this conference, to every striker, to every worker fighting back, to every worker demanding fairness, dignity and respect at work. Solidarity greetings from Unite. Brothers, sisters and comrades, I had the gross misfortune of reading an article the other day about somebody called Stella Creasy, an MP in London. And look, when I read the headline on the article, Stella Creasy's answer to the cost of living crisis, I thought, well, maybe we should have seen this earlier on. Maybe Pete and the Coventry strikers wouldn't have had to have taken strike action if only we'd known that Stella has the answer. And here's the answer from a Labour MP. Here's the answer to working class people living through a cost of living crisis. Buy second-hand items. Buy second-hand gear. A sort of 21st century swap shop. For those of you below the age of 50, you won't understand, but those of you over the age of 50 will remember Noel Edmonds and Swap Shop on the telly, and I don't want to have to go through that all over again. But that's the answer from a Labour MP. I thought when I read it, it was a joke, but unfortunately, it is not. There is no need to strike. All you need to do is swap some goods. Now, look, I've got no problem with buying second-hand. The problem I've got is that this is Labour's answer to the cost of living crisis. Second-hand, second-rate and second-best, where you can stick your swap shop where the sun doesn't shine. Our class, the working class, is giving everybody a first-class, first-rate answer that will never be past its sell-by date. That's strike action. Here's our answer to the cost of living crisis. Here's our answer to stellar crises. Labour councillors can do something about it now, today, by agreeing no cuts, needs-based budgets in every single local authority that they control. And that at a stroke, can improve the lives of the working class, just like heroic Labour councillors did in Liverpool in the 80s. Unite is giving the answer. Over 300 separate disputes, a 74% success rate since the election of our current General Secretary, and over £25 million won in extra earnings for workers. We're not swapping our principles, we're winning, brothers and sisters. And look, it gets even crazier. I kid you not, she claims that this is an effective recycling scheme that will save the planet. Leaving aside the rather dubious value of individual actions while big business destroys the planet. Her logic is that the cost of living crisis somehow and poverty pay has a silver lining. Well, again, here's our logic. There's plenty of wealth out there. It's just that too few people and the wrong people have got it. If you want to swap something, swap greed for fairness. Swap poverty and give us decent pay. In fact, sod it, swap capitalism and give us socialism, comrades, brothers and sisters. We have now produced study after study, and the RMT have made the point again and again. Inflation is not caused by wage spirals, it's caused by profiteering. That's a fact, and that's something that we as trade unions need to make sure that we hammer that home. Now, look, there's a couple of disputes I do want to talk to you about. And I'm going to pick Hackney Council, just down the road, where we've got members who are not believing the lies, where we've got members who have been taking action to win better pay. Why have I picked Hackney Council? Because the Hackney Mayor, Philip Glanville, will tomorrow be speaking at an event, and here's a prediction. The Labour Mayor of Hackney will speak at that event tomorrow, and he'll speak out against the cost of living crisis. And he'll say how terrible it is, while at the same time, he leads a council that refuses to even negotiate with our members who want a decent living. I am sick and tired of councillors and MPs turning up to events at the weekend, maybe even wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt to show how revolutionary they are, speaking about the cost of living crisis on a Sunday, and then going into the town hall on the Monday morning and pushing through cuts that are going to hit our members. That is rank hypocrisy. That is rank hypocrisy. Fighting poverty, for them, is a weekend hobby, no doubt to try and salve their consciences. In Coventry, where our refuse members have been running an absolutely fantastic campaign, all out indefinite action since January. The local MP, Zara Sultana, has visited the picket line once, and these members have been out since January, and she attempted an early day motion. And I don't know if you've noticed, there's an awful lot of this on the TV at the moment. I spend a lot of my time kicking the TV over and then having to put it back up again. But there's an awful lot on the TV at the moment about the impact of the cost of living crisis. And yesterday, I think it was on ITV News, we had yet another tragic figure. A mother taking her child through a supermarket, being filmed as a child wanted some expensive biscuits. Mum saying, sorry, we can't afford that. Absolute tragedy. But have you noticed, even the likes of Kay Burley and the rest of them in the media will look at that and it will be, look at the sadness in that child's eye. But as soon as the working class stands up and decides to fight back, then we're greedy, we're unreasonable, we're militants. There's the hypocrisy for you once again, brothers and sisters. And the worst thing about it is it's not just the media, it's politicians as well. I've only got less than a minute left, so I haven't got time to go through 700 of our disputes. Pete, it's an absolute honour and a privilege to be the officer looking after the Coventry strikers. Pete will go through the dispute in a bit more detail. What I want to tell you about is we are now issuing notice to the bus operators, the bus companies, nationally, to say Unite is coming for you, and that's high time. We are going to target bus operators across the regions in coordinated campaigns. Just imagine this for a second. Wouldn't it be fantastic if Unite members on buses were out on strike as RMT members on the rail taking action at the same time? That's the type of coordination that we need to get to, brothers and sisters. Those bosses will be hearing from us. We've already begun meeting our members and pouring resources into that area. Let me finish on this point. We do live in exciting, but sometimes maybe strange times. We have another ally alongside Stella Creasy. It's the Economist, the foremost organ of capitalism, if you like. This last week, they've said that they've built a statistical model to examine the relationship between food and fuel price inflation and political unrest. And funnily enough, they conclude that there is a causal relationship between the two. We could have saved them an awful lot of time, comrades, brothers and sisters, because we have our own measure. It's called a strike ballot. It's called strike action. Solidarity, brothers and sisters. Victory to every single striking worker and forward to a brighter socialist future. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thanks, Kaz, and thanks for stepping in for Sharon. I know times are a bit hectic at the moment, and I don't think there's any other. There's never been a dispute, I think, where clearly you're either on the side of the workers or you're not, and clearly everybody in this room is on the side of the Coventry bin workers, but it's reached high levels as well. But clearly, it's a question we need to ask every politician as well: which side are you on? And they should be coming down on our side, but puts that pressure on them, keep that pressure on. But we have always got solidarity with working class people. So great pleasure to introduce Pete Randall on behalf of the Coventry bin workers.
Thanks first and foremost for having us here today. It's a real honour and pleasure to share with you the action that we've been taking against the Labour Council in Coventry. I'm here today as one of the lead reps from Coventry HGV driver strike. Our strike is about to enter the 7th month. We've been out on strike for 125 days. What led us to going out on strike is simple. We'd had enough. We'd had enough in the way that we were being treated over the years, through the pandemic, and it was time to organise. In the workspace, we then led weekly meetings, some twice a week. And again, the most important thing that we did was simply organise. Get people on side, get the feel, see how they felt, and making sure that they were on side of what we wanted to conduct. What was evident is that everybody had had enough. We went forward to a director that earns £130,000 through Coventry City Council, and he practically said to us that if we felt that confident, go and ballot members. He didn't feel that we could pull two strings together, were his actual words to us. We took that as a challenge and an offer that he were offering us out. It was the wrong thing to do. Basically, since we've organised, we then had to mobilise. We got a ballot success rate of 97.3% to carry out strike action on the first wave of ballot. When we got onto the picket line, it was evident that we needed to mobilise within the community also, whether that meant distributing leaflets at train stations, bus stations, standing outside young children's schools issuing the parents' leaflets. This is a Labour council. Or is it the Tory B team? Is it the highlightation of a Keir Starmer government? This council carried out defamation to our members on that picket line, saying that we earned £52,000. Let me be very clear. If we earned £52,000, we wouldn't be standing on a pissing picket line. So we're out for fair pay for a fair day's work. The Labour are trying to discredit us. We're showing them what a union do, what a union deliver on. This council has brought in a scab workforce, an arm-length company, a Labour council, bringing in strike breakers to defeat and bust the union. That ain't going to be accepted. And that was why we decided as a union to re-escalate. That re-escalation carried out another ballot for a further strike action for another 12 weeks. We had was it 93%? And we turned that over in the space of 6 days. Through one means and another, we managed to deliver on that. We stand on a picket line. As you stand on a picket line, fire starts to rage between workers. And it makes a difference on that picket because they become passionate. It becomes personal. And I'm sure that every strike that's going on across this country are feeling the same. The strikers on our picket line are proud of the fight, but also proud of the struggle. We see solidarity, hear solidarity. It isn't when you feel solidarity, you understand what it is. Our picket lines mobilised across other picket lines whilst our strikes remained. That went from the UCU in Birmingham to the RMT at Coventry, the RMT in the Neaton. We've been to rallies to the TUC events, etc. And we'll continue to do so. Why our strike remains? Because we know how important solidarity is. Solidarity means the world to struggling workers and the communities. Labour in Coventry, like I've already said, are highlighting a government of that Starmer could actually one day lead under Labour. God help us. Labour should be on the side of working people, not supporting the Tory frontbench, as clearly they've evidently shown through what they've done to the RMT and us in Coventry. The unions, I believe, will certainly be the vanguard to this action. The trade unions and its members have the proudness and also the fight that has the vision to organise and win. We need to fight industrially first as a movement, extending that political arm at a later date and possibly finding a new political home. There is a huge class war going on. There's a huge class war going on, and we need to wake up to this. If we don't, the divide becomes greater. Thank you once again in solidarity. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. And I think what this platform's shown and all the movements that are happening across the piece, across our trade union movement, is the issues across the public and private sectors are very similar. What we're facing in terms of attacks on our jobs, our pay and conditions are very similar, which is why we should be uniting together. So our next speaker, I very much welcome from NAPO, the Probation Officers Union, Anushka Vallant.
Thanks, comrades. And first of all, I want to give apologies on behalf of our General Secretary, Ian Lawrence, who's not able to be here in person today, but hopes it will be a very successful conference today. We've had the awful experience, obviously, or to put it more bluntly, the trauma put among them by the then Justice Secretary, as we call him, failing Grayling, with the part privatization of the service. And then we, NAPO at the time, we said, this will not work. This is going to put the public at risk. It's not going to do anything. And we went on strike. We did a judicial review as well. I mean, we threw the kitchen sink at it to try and prevent it. Unfortunately, we are a small union, and it went through, and it's been a major disaster. And obviously, the result was that the reunification happened last year. The government realized that, yes, as we told them so, it was not going to work. So it was reunified last year, but now we have all the problems of trying to pull it back together. It was a service that worked really, really well, and it was like pulled apart, and now to put it back together is an even bigger hurdle. And it's like, what they did as well is obviously then, as we try to go against the proposals at the time of Grayling, they also put check-off away, so the members paying by subscription, by salary deduction. So they did that to us as well. So that was an attack on us, also big attack by the Tory government. But since then, since the reunification as well, it's a major. It's one inspectorate report, probation inspectorate report after another. Is just saying how bad the situation is. And it's the acute staffing crisis, really, and the huge workloads on the remaining staff now, and the stress as a result of the privatization and pulling it back together. Now, I've not been at one meeting over the past year where members have not been either close to or broken down in tears. Only last week, I received an email from a member in a small probation office, and I quote, "We have an ongoing staffing crisis here with 5 people now off with work-related stress. There have been numerous cases recently of members of staff in clear distress. The advice given by a senior manager yesterday told us this: please be mindful of the effects on colleagues on crying and try to refrain. If you feel you are crying too much, use the appropriate channels. Do not burden your colleagues." And this is what is going on across both probation and in the family courts, the high workloads as a result of staff cuts, of the staffing crisis, over the past years. And then I think as Sarah, new members also, so we have new members, what they're telling us is they say, we'll reach a steady state of enough staff in about, first it was, they told us 2023, then they said 2024, now it's 2025. So what do you tell, what do our members think, as in, by what time am I going to be under less pressure, as they are promising us? New starters are coming in and leaving the job as soon as they have actually qualified, because they realize, again, the amount of pay that I'm on, what is the pressure that I have to deal with? Potential, because there aren't enough people. People have to deal with new, young, qualified probation officers, have to deal with very, very high-risk cases. The pressure on them is just enormous. And I think, as Sarah said as well, people don't understand the job maybe that our members do, and it's because they do the job well. you only hear about it when it goes wrong. For example, when you had the Sonics murders in London, that was because, again, the staffing levels weren't good enough, recently qualified probation officers were left to deal with a high-risk case. So again, this is what it is. People don't understand it, and this is what we need to get out to people about what the jobs that we do. Now, NAPO is not a union known for its militancy, and it's because our members care passionately about the job that they do and the people that they work with. And I think we've had about, in our 110-year history, I think we had only 4 or 5 national strikes. I wish I could say I couldn't count them, but I think I could count them on one hand. But this is going to change because our members, they've had enough. And we've got a mandate for we're in a trade dispute over pay and over workloads. We had an informal ballot last year that had went over the threshold for a formal ballot. We are currently in pay negotiations that are about to end or were about to end this week. But if the offer comes back and it's not what our members deserve, we will next week go to our negotiating committee, ask for endorsement, and we will invoke our trade dispute, and we will then go for a formal industrial action ballot. I think the demo was a big turnaround. For the first time to be out together marching with all the unions, but it is now indeed, as what we'll do as well, we will go for a formal ballot. We will look to work with any other unions, especially work together, first of all, with the other unions in the justice sector, but we will work with any other union, and if we are going on action, we will look to coordinate any action with any other union that is also going for action. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Anushka. We still have a couple of speakers that we hope will come. Unfortunately, the Senior Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, Eddie Dempsey, has got some personal issues that he can't make, means he can't come. So we're going to have a substitution from the bench, but we've got 2 substitutions. This wouldn't be allowed in football, by the way, or rugby. So there are not just 2 disputes in the RMT, but there are clearly 2 major disputes right now in the RMT, along with others. I'm sure that might be mentioned. But we're going to bring up onto the stage Paul from the national dispute, and Noreen from London Underground. So a big welcome to the RMT. That's it. Hang on, you're going to a stand ovation. You haven't said anything yet. I think you've got a few friends here. So in any order you want to do.
So, yeah, there's myself. I've been an RMT rep for quite some years. I was on the national executive of the union for a while, but don't hold that against me. I spoke up in Coventry at the NSSN meeting the other week. It was on the first day of the strike action, and it was in between pickets. I still had another picket line to go to at the depot. And I went to the meeting, and apart from being knackered and everything, I was quite emotional at the meeting, because this was the first, apart from being elected, I said this was, being elected onto the NEC was the proudest moment of my RMT membership, but Tuesday was the proudest moment. It was quite a movement of people standing out on the picket lines, all up and down the country. The first national rail strike in my 31-year membership of the RMT. So you can imagine how much that got to me. Seeing all the photos on Facebook, all the support from people, not just people like us, shop stewards like us and union members, but people at general public. When we were standing on the picket line, the amount of support we got from the general public, because they understand the issues, they're living the issues. These people are cutting through the bullshit that the Tory party and the MSN, mainstream media, are spouting, trying to vilify us. But people are living this, and that's why I think this time people are taking a notice of all the crap. Yeah, Mick Lynch has done an excellent job of cutting out a lot of the bullshit that's happening. He's tearing down Piers Morgan and the rest of the people on the celly, just ripping them apart. Tory MPs ripping them apart because they're all spouting bullshit, and he's calling them out for it. And people are understanding that because they're living this. So yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant, the start of this dispute, and I think it's a long dispute we're going to be having, and members are up for this because they know that this is our miners' strike. This is our fight. They're going to try and they're blaming COVID for ripping up Network Rail members' terms and conditions, getting rid of jobs. They've brought about a redundancy package now to try and threaten us into accepting all of these cuts. There's whole swathes of grades of workers being made redundant over this. It's not about pay. It is about pay. We deserve a pay rise. But it's no good having a pay rise if you've lost your job, or if your terms and conditions are so crap that you don't want a job. So the members know that this is, for want of a better term, shit or bust. It is. There'll be no workplace left to work at if they get their way. They're blaming COVID, but they've been having these attacks on us for at least the last 10 years. And they're using the cover of COVID now and the lack of footfall on trains to bring about these attacks. I've just come down from the meeting today on the train, and it was standing room only. It was packed. It took me 10 minutes to go off Euston Station because two loaded trains were trying to offload onto the platforms. Now, if that's 80% of the passengers that they're saying we're up to at the minute, then God help us when we're up to capacity, because it's just absolute rubbish. Now, the members are quite annoyed with the, absolutely round off with the crap that the company are coming out with, saying about these attacks, when I think it was 14 of the top highest earners were Network Rail executive members. The CEO is on £500,000 a year. They made train operating companies made £300 million profit during COVID. Now, they're saying there was losses. They have to reap back the costs. They made profits. 949 million for companies who own the trains. 300 million profit for companies who operate the trains. And 235 million profit for companies who repair the tracks. Now, if these executive members can earn these high wages, then why can't the members? Take it off them. Tax the high earners. But we shouldn't have to pay the price. Apart from Network Rail membership, maintenance workers, station staff, the one about cutting all of the ticket, most of the ticket offices. Now, if you're an elderly member or can't use the apps, or a disabled member, or whoever, anyone who can't use the apps, wants to go to a train station and get a ticket or get a bit of help, an unmanned station is dangerous in the first place. But to unman the ticket offices, or to get rid of the ticket offices like they did on London Underground, it's a recipe for disaster. So, also, the train operating companies, in the last few years, our members have been fighting attacks on the role of the guard and taking guards off trains. We won them battles, and now they're coming after them again. So our members are saying enough is enough, and luckily the general public are seeing straight through this and are fully supportive of this. And yeah, like I say, this is going to be a long fight, and our members are up for the battle, and long may it continue. It was great to see the Coventry bin workers turn up to Nuneaton station picket line the other week. I've been across there before to their picket line before, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I think all unions, this is going to be a great summer because everyone's saying enough's enough. And if all of us come out and we can have a general strike in this country, that would be another proud moment tomorrow. Thank you very much. Solidarity.
My name is Noreen Hayes, and I'm the London Transport Regional Council's Membership Secretary. So I've been very deep in the heart of organising our members to smash these Tory ballots, and it's a hard job. It's a job that every one of you are living on a day-to-day basis. The detail that you have to get into your members and make sure that their raw data is up to date, their addresses are correct. These Tory thresholds are made to crush us, but they're failing, and they're failing miserably. And I can tell you why they're failing on London Undergrounds, and that's because our workers on London Underground, they're agitated, they're educated, and they are organised. Each one of them has put their tick in their box to tell management that how upset they are, but who they're really telling about their anger and their distaste for what's going on for them is the Tory government, who are directly telling our bosses to take our pensions away. And unlike our comrades on our national rail, we're not fighting for a pay rise. We're fighting to keep what we have, what we've earned. I've put money into my pension for 23 years, and I don't intend to give it up to the Tories anytime soon. So if they think they're coming to London Underground and simply saying to TfL, take that out of the pot, save £100 million a year they want out of our pension fund, a complete raid, they can think again, because we're not having it at all. Our workers worked through a pandemic, put themselves at risk. We know many workers in our engineering grades, our fleet, and on our buses throughout London Transport who passed away, as our chair referenced earlier. They died in the front line of making sure that services ran in this country. And the government cheered them as heroes. Well done us, weren't we great? Keep it moving. In fact, the government, 3 months into the pandemic, said we need 100% of services to running. We don't want your workers at home lazing around, getting a couple of hours out of their jobs to lower the amount of numbers in a station. We want you all in, and we want trains running. The same Prime Minister telling us to run 100% services, putting our bus workers at risk with no mitigation, when he was the Mayor of London, shut the 600 ticket offices and took away 600 jobs, or at least tried to. But London Underground workers stood together, station and train staff, and we had strike action way back in 2016 and won those workers back. Those jobs were back. They were re-employed elsewhere in the business. And what a surprise that the number is 600. Now the Prime Minister is back. It's 600 is the number again, because that was his original plan. So all of this is under the guise of COVID. But in reality, these are Tory plans that have always been there for TfL. They've always wanted to have a decrease in our services on London Underground. They want to run us into the ground. And as the Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has told us, it will be managed decline for the next few years for our London transport system. Managed decline of services, managed decline, no ticket offices, no station staff to assist you. And our station staff have made it really clear. Our reps out there who are organising on a daily basis tell us those cuts won't stop at 600. There are more planned. We could lose 1,200 staff, it's anticipated, on the stations alone, which means another King's Cross could be imminent, a time where people working in deep-level tubes are cut to the quick. How will they evacuate that station in 4 minutes, as they can do today? They're the real serious concerns that our members have. And whether you work on track, whether you work in fleet, whether you work as a train driver, station staff, if you're one of our signallers, our controllers, you were all out on strike on the 1st and 3rd of March. You were all out on strike just recently, and we'll be all out again shortly. Solidarity, comrades. RMT is here to support you all.
Thanks.
So I'd very much like to welcome the National Education Union's National President, Daniel Kabida, to speak to us.
So thank you, and it's a real privilege actually to be with you today, organising the fight back and standing with you all. So I've got a bit of a busy schedule. I'm going to try and stay with you as long as I can. But this is where we are going to be organising the fight back. And I do actually want to just say a big thank you to the RMT comrades who are in the room, because you've inspired a movement. You've inspired the entire trade union movement to fight back. And it's absolutely vital that we do. And I'm the president of the NEU, but actually when I'm not doing that, I am just a teacher up in the northeast. And we are going to be organising our own fight back currently. But I had the privilege, actually, because our office is just near Euston, to watch Mike Lynch and Eddie Dempsey run rings around the media, absolutely humiliated them. And it was an absolute joy to watch, you know, working class voices on mainstream television, organising and fighting for our rights. And they got the press flustered, let's be honest. They were completely flustered. And I'll tell you what the press wanted to do. They wanted to humiliate the RMT. They wanted to break their strike, and they weren't successful. And what we are seeing is huge public support for that action. People know, actually, that they can't wait for a Labour government. The Corbyn avenue has been completely shut off. So they're turning to the RMT, and they're going to turn to all of us to be the answer to the absolute grotesque conditions that this government want us to live in. And, you know, in the NEU, we have had our fair few attacks from the press and from the government, and there's definitely more to come. We had plenty of it throughout COVID. The Education Secretary says that we were wrong to close schools and behave in the way that we did as a union movement, but it was actually this government were wrong. You know, our schools never shut. They were always open to those who were most in need and most vulnerable, and our members went above and beyond during this pandemic, and it was this government who had been wrong. They were wrong to not invest in the safe continuity of education. But look, we feel like we are moving from crisis to crisis. We've just come out of this global pandemic. The world feels like it's teetering on the edge of World War III, and now we've got this biggest squeeze in our living standards in our lifetime. And, you know, we can see the excuses that are coming from the ruling class. Boris Johnson's not sure where to put the blame, actually. Sometimes he blames it on Putin. Sometimes he calls it the aftershocks of COVID. But these are narratives that we absolutely have to reject. When President Biden calls the cost of living crisis the Putin price hike, we have to absolutely say no. The issue is the extraction of wealth from our schools, from our children, and from our communities. And they're saying that RPI is at 11% and it's going to hit 6% next year. But the reality is, for working people, it's well beyond that. Pasta's up 50%. I shop in Lidl, nothing extravagant, and that's expensive now. There's, you know, I live in the northeast, so I have to travel a lot by car. It was £1.50 a litre for fuel not that long ago. Now it's over £2 a litre. This is well beyond 11% RPI. It might be 11% RPI for the rich, but it's certainly much greater than that for the rest of us. Me, like I'm sure the rest of you in here, I had my energy bills double from £128 to £290. Working people are going to be driven to absolute destitution unless we fight back. And when I looked actually at what's going on, my energy supplier, Shell, made £9.2 billion in profit just in the first quarter of this year alone. That's why we've got a cost of living crisis. It's actually a crisis in greed. And what we are seeing actually is that this is, of course, happening off the back of what they call wage stagnation. We've had a decade of wage stagnation, but as we all know, this has been real term cuts. Most of our members, teachers, have lost 17% in real terms since 2010. If you've been a teacher with more experience, you've lost 20% since 2010. A teaching assistant, those who are lowest paid in our schools, have lost £4,000 a year in real terms since 2010. So my union are beginning the process of organising and fighting back around pay. We've got this arbitrary body that are going to make an award called the STRB. They're saying it'll either be, I'm seeing different things in the media actually, 5% over 2 years, 9% over 2 years. Whatever they come back with, it is more than likely going to be a huge and monumental wage cut for our members that they cannot afford to take. But it's not just our members who are suffering. I've got a young boy who goes to a mainstream primary school. All of our schools are walking into a monumental funding crisis because they have food to buy, they have heating bills to pay, they have an electricity bills to pay. And those who are in government probably don't mind that our schools are walking into this funding crisis because they send their kids to Eton and Harrow and all the other lucrative private schools of this country. So we absolutely, as a profession, need to be raising the issue of teachers' pay, but also funding. But there is one thing that I absolutely want everybody to raise the issue of, wherever they are in conversation, and that's the issue of child poverty. 4.3 million children living in poverty is a 2019 statistic. It's a statistic prior to the COVID pandemic, prior to the biggest squeeze in our living standards since in our lifetime. And the reality is it was predicted to hit 5 million this year had none of these things happened. And I know what the reality of that looks like. I just teach outside Newcastle upon Tyne. We have children coming to school hungry. They can't wait for their free school meals. They've not got the adequate uniform. They've not got decent housing. No child or education system can flourish when we are forcing millions of children to live in poverty. And it is an absolute shame on the 6th richest economy in this country that we have this situation. But I want to just talk about teachers' pay again, because I went to the STRB and I said to them, unless you give us an inflation plus pay rise, we're going to start balloting, right? And I went into this room and I was expecting our pay to be decided by people who knew something about education, and I was shocked by what I saw. You go into a room, long table of people, you do the introductions. Hi, I'm so-and-so from Deloitte. Hi, I'm so-and-so from PricewaterhouseCoopers. These people have got no idea about education, and they take 25 days leave from their big city jobs to dictate what we're going to get paid. And do you know how much they get paid? For their 25 days, they get £300 a day, more than a lord. Now, these are the people who are going to tell teachers to tighten their belts, and it's tell teachers to tighten their belts so they don't have to. And they do the same with nurses. And it's not just them who don't have to tighten their belts, but Boris Johnson, who calls his second wage chicken feed, doesn't have to tighten his belt. Nadeem Zahawi, who's worth more than the Queen and got non-dom status, doesn't have to tighten his belt. Priti Patel, who takes £100 donations from oil traders, doesn't have to tighten her belt. These are the people who are telling us to tighten our belts so they don't have to. So I want us to absolutely fight back and push back against this rotten government. But we have seen how we can win, and the RMT are showing it. When we stand together in solidarity and take action against this government and everything they're doing to us, the public support us. The tides are turning on what this government is capable of doing to our people. Let's push back and let's reorganise society so that every school is funded properly, every child has an adequate home and a full belly, and every teacher and every public sector worker and every worker up and down this country has a wage so they can live in dignity and be treated with respect. And thank you very much.